So democratic has come to acquire this meaning of just multiplicity for multiplicity's own sake. Pure multiplicity, pure diversity, pure open society, as Soros would put it, right? That's what they mean by democracy. But this is actually not, it's not actually ruled by the people, like the actual people. It's not building a state that has a popular character. It's building a state that is devoid of any singular popular will to begin with, right? And this is a state that is able to be fully controlled and beholden to the interests of the globalist and neo-feudal ruling class. So we have a very paradoxical situation. The countries that resemble the ancient regime the most today, which have monarchs like Xi Jinping or Putin, who just have these strongman figures, those are actually the democracies today. So it's like today, monarchy, right? Just in quotations, is democratic. Whereas democracy is tyrannical and oligarchic and despotic, right? So people need to keep that in mind. This is a wrong way of framing it, right? I mean, Ukraine has a democracy, which is what? It's the rule of the NGOs, and it's the rule of billionaires, and it's the rule of these institutions, right? But it doesn't actually have a state that has like any real popular character imbued in it as manifested in some kind of singular will. Yeah, exactly. The French Revolution was not the rule of MSNBC, okay? The French Revolution was the rule of, it was a populist event. It was popular. It was rugged. It was the masses, the people with the capital P, right? It was authoritarian. Like, for example, FDR was considered this authoritarian tyrant, right? Why? Because FDR had to go beyond the limits of bourgeois democracy. Well, the same is true for people like Putin, right? Putin nationalized the Russian gas industry. Was that democratic? Yes. Nationalizing the Russian gas industry was democratic because it subordinated the most important sector of the economy to the interests of the majority of the people. So it's democratic. Demos meaning people. People have a really twisted view of democracy in the historical sense. I'm talking about what communists used to say when they said democracy. They didn't mean the neoliberal democracy of George Soros and the Open Society Foundation and the NGOs and CNN and MSNBC. That's a fake veneer of democracy. It's not democracy. It's the veneer of a democracy. It's the rule of pure negativity, pure negation, the absence of any singular will, the absence of any singular determinate will, just the reign of pure multiplicity. Can I ask you guys a question? Is pure diversity of will democracy? Can you have a pure multiplicity of political will and have that be democratic? No, because the people are actually not the sum total of individuals. So what we're dealing with is a conflicting view of society here. In the West, the people are just the sum total of individuals. So since every individual has a different opinion, then what democracy means is that one opinion is never given too much sway. But from an Eastern perspective, a society is not made up of the sum total of individuals. Individuals are part of a bigger collective, right? And if that's true, then democracy must necessarily imply a state that exercises the singular will of the people. Because believe it or not, our founding fathers had a collectivistic view of democracy too. They did believe in a singular will. They did believe in a strong man, executive, almost monarchical presidential leader, right? They did their best they could to empower the executive branch, right? I mean, the executive of the United States had more power than the British Crown. They didn't like Parliament and the parliamentary model. They wanted a strong leader that represented the singular will of the people, right? We had a revolution against... No, we didn't! Because your history has been fucking lied to you. Read the book, The Royalist Revolution. The founding fathers initially wanted to restore the power of the British monarch because they hated Parliament. They thought Parliament was the problem. And to learn from that mistake, what they did was create a very powerful executive branch so that there would never be any kind of equivalent to parliament that would have the power it happen. Yeah, parliamentary monarchy is not a real monarchy. It's an oligarchic usurpation of monarchy. Yeah, the founding fathers wanted a one-party state. This is all a history that's been completely erased from us, right? It's very well and fine to be like a Marxist who's like, oh yeah, the democratic revolution. This is the current Communist Party of the USA's line. That's why I'm surprised Taryn hasn't steered it in the direction of anti-Russian imperialism. Yet. She plans on doing that. She definitely does plan on doing that. But we don't live in modernity. So modernity was just where you had these shocking, revolutions, and it's the modern world, and it's electricity, and we're overthrowing the old world, right? The 21st century is the era of the morning after. You know what that means? It means, okay, you can have your democratic revolution, but then what, right? Well, Russia had its democratic revolution, and then what? Well, then you have to go back, you have to attend to the actual realities of your country having a specific character, your people having specific determinate needs. And that was Putin, right? It's now what? And that's why authoritarian states are more advanced than democratic states. Authoritarian states are not pre-democratic, they're post-democratic. Putin doesn't fear a democratic revolution. He's a post-democratic figure, right? This is after the era of democracy. And we're maturing now. It's a post-democratic era where you've preserved the essence of democracy, but you're no longer limited or bounded by its form, right? I mean, Putin is not a dictator, okay? He's not. And the truth is, and I'm willing to, again, bet my balls on this, Putin doesn't fear a Maidan or a democratic revolution. What he does fear is the Communist Party of the Russian Federation. And the only reason Putin was knocking on the Soviet leaders wasn't because he wants to restore the Russian Empire. It was because he's trying to suppress the popularity of the Communist Party, which is the largest opposition party in Russia, fully legal and integrated into the government. And that's who Putin's scared of right now, is the Communist Party. So if Putin is knocking on Lenin or the Soviet republics, it's because he's dealing with an internal factional conflict within the Popular Front democracy that is the Russian state with the Communist Party. So Russia is governed by a Popular Front. It's a democracy that's governed by a Popular Front. The Communist Party is also part of this Popular Front. It's the second largest power within that Popular Front. And Putin doesn't control them. He competes with them, right? And they're gaining more power than before. And he was trying to knock on them. I need you guys to understand, we don't live in a democracy in America. We don't. We have a deep state that is not elected. Our mainstream media is not elected. Our corporations that rule us are not elected. We don't live in a fucking democracy, okay? There's no such thing as a democracy as this guy's putting it. I mean, America's democratic and Russia's not? Why? Because the people who actually rule our country are, as Putin said, men in dark suits who are completely unaccountable to the public. At least Putin is accountable to the public. Our deep state is not. You don't even know who these fucking people are. And look at this. Democratic, successful countries bordering European Russia are a menace to him personally. Are you talking about the neo-Nazi, fascist, extremely racist, xenophobic states? I mean, let's look at a map of Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe map. I just want to show you the absurdity of what this fucking guy is saying. So let's look at a map of Eastern Europe. So here's Russia. So I presume the democratic states he's talking about are these ones. So these states have literal Nazi veterans of the Wehrmacht and Nazi collaborators parade on the street regularly. They're extremely racist and repressive against civilians. And And Russia's beef with them has nothing to do with the fact that they're democratic. It has everything to do with the fact that they're rabidly anti-Russian racists, right? Who else could you be referring to? Finland? Russia doesn't give a fuck about Finland, okay? They don't give a fuck about Finland. Okay, the only significance of Finland has always been neutral, right? They don't give a shit about Finland. If what you're saying is true, this would have held for Soviet times as well. I want you guys to understand the democratic Fabian socialist theory of modern geopolitics. Can you bear with me and shut the fuck up and listen right now? What democratic socialists say is that Russia and China and all these other states are capitalist hellholes like any other state, right? But they lack democracy, and that's bad because democracy is a necessary part of socialism. So what they're saying is America is closer to socialism because at least we have democracy. Except that's not how politics work in China or in Russia. In Russia, the interests of the workers are not being repressed by Putin. Putin actually, his government, his Popular Front government, gives them a greater platform. Because in a neoliberal economy, you don't even have the ability to intervene in the economy in ways that would benefit workers, right? In Belarus, who's defending all the unions in Belarus and all the workers' interest in Belarus? It's not the democratic NGO forces who are extremely elitist and hostile to the people. It's Lukashenko. Lukashenko, the dictator, right? He defends them. So you need to understand that democracy, this dog whistle word democracy, is not beneficial to workers. It's a way to repress workers. Democracy does not benefit workers. It represses them. This is brain rot. Then fucking debate me, dumbass. I'll give you direct examples. Whenever these people are going around talking about democracy, they're talking about privatizing they're not talking about turning the economy into a bunch of workers' co-ops. They're talking about privatizing the company, giving Western financial capitalists free reign to do whatever the fuck they want, and effectively establishing a neo-feudal economy. Now, when you have the rule of tyrannical private corporations and Silicon Valley big tech platforms, is that democratic? Did we elect Mark Zuckerberg? Did we elect Jeff Bezos? Yet these people have a tremendous amount of power over our fucking lives. So in a democratic society, it's not that you have more freedom, you're more controlled there's less popular accountability than ever before. You need to get rid of this fucking idea that this is a conflict between democracy and authoritarianism. America is just as authoritarian as China or Russia is. The only difference is that it's not accountable. We don't know the authorities who control us. We don't elect them. They don't answer to us. They don't give speeches to us. We don't see their faces. That's the only fucking difference. What if Bernie Sanders became president? If Bernie became president, wouldn't he and he actually did shit, wouldn't he be considered like an authoritarian dictator like Hugo Chavez? He would have to he would have to be this Caesarian strongman because Congress will try to fuck him over, right? Because when you have a singular will, you're going to be authoritarian. The only thing that prevents authoritarianism, as in the way that leftists describe it at least, is just by having difference for difference's own sake. I mean, Nancy Pelosi said, this country needs a strong Republican Party. I mean, it's straight out of the horse's mouth. This country needs a strong Republican Party. Caesar was not democratic. He was. That's the thing, is that Julius Caesar was democratic. He actually did represent the Roman people. And the patricians who were talking about the sanctity of the Republic, they were anti-democratic. They didn't want the people to have political representation. They wanted the pure forms and procedures to remain intact, which actually disenfranchised the majority of the Romans. I mean, Caesar, he extended rights to ethnic and religious minorities. Of course, he was more democratic, right? Yeah, the only difference, you either are going to have authoritarianism or oligarchy. Choose one.